From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They call me Ben. We're joined as always with our super producer, Alexis, codename Doc Holiday Jackson. Most importantly, you are here. That makes this the stuff they don't want you to know. It is the top of the week. Happy May 6th to everybody tuning in. Happy May the 4th and so on. We knew we had to start tonight's program with, there's a lot of stuff we have to get to, but first, I think we can all agree there is some incredibly important breaking news that we have to get the word out about. The rumors are true. Our long-standing dream has finally come to fruition. Gentlemen, folks, people, conspiracy realists, everybody, you can now gamble at Dave & Buster's.
What?
Very soon you can.
Wait, so this is what I wanted to clarify, Ben. I saw this. You sent it to our group text. It said something about gambling on arcade machines. Does this mean you'll be placing bets on like Street Fighter?
I'm so glad you asked, because here is how it works. You get the D&B app, which obviously all of us already have. And then you, through the app, you can make what they call friendly wagers.
Ah, yes, I love a friendly wager.
Games that people are playing. According to Dave & Buster's statement, quote, customers can soon make a friendly $5 wager on a Hot Shots basketball game, a bet on a skee ball competition, or on another arcade game. The betting function is expected to launch in the next few months. So if you have ever been getting house drunk with your adult friends at Dave & Buster's and decide to put some money on one of the kids playing skee ball, your time has come.
Yeah, man. 8 chocolate choo-choos deep. You know, so is this like only being rolled out in states where gambling is legal, or because you're using an app, is it somehow a loophole-y kind of thing? Wow,
yeah.
This is very confusing.
We were talking about this because I wanted to surprise you guys on air, given the gravity of this news. However, got too excited, a little bit sleep deprived as ever. It looks like they did loophole it, as we were talking about in our group chat. It looks as though the kind of the way that online gambling apps or like DraftKings stuff works, regardless, it looks like that's what Dave & Buster's is doing. Because from what I can tell, and Dave, Buster, please write in. Big fans, correct us if we're wrong here. But from what we can tell, it seems that this is going to take place in every D&B location, including our own. So we may have to change our weekend travel
Dangerous,
plans.
Dude. Dangerous. Can you imagine people losing their shirt betting on Mortal Kombat?
I can. I mean, like, okay, first off, is Dave & Buster's not only, like, jokes aside, is it not somewhat grooming kids for a casino experience?
Yeah,
a little bit. I mean,
you could argue. I mean, they would probably argue that Dave & Buster's is for families. You know, it's a place where kids and their parents can both enjoy things in equal amounts. I mean, Chuck E. Cheese, I would argue, is way more gratuitously that thing than Dave & Buster's. But okay. I don't know. Who's to say?
Well, before the courts get to it,
I guess the courts are to say. Perhaps.
The courts are probably going to say that. I think they have bigger fish to fry now. We just wanted to open with that and let you know some of the favorite comments. The audience response has been largely positive, and I want to give a shout out to SC Irish 843 on Reddit, who said, "As someone who has bet on reruns of Legends of the Hidden Temple." Reruns, 4 a.m. women's ping pong, and those little tabletop magnetic horse racing games, I know plenty of people who gladly sit at the table with their buddies, drinking beer, gambling on children playing Hoop Fever. What could go wrong?
A lot of pressure if someone's putting money on your performance too, right?
Can you imagine being like 9 years old and you're just you're at a birthday party or something.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden from behind, wherever the restaurant or bar is, you hear some guy go like, sink this one, do it for the kipper.
Little Johnny. Yeah.
Johnny.
Daddy needs a new pair of shoes.
Yeah. Or you see some kid fail miserably and then somebody from across the room throws a chair because he's so upset and he really did just lose a lot of money.
So I wonder if they're going to have to do the same thing that Vegas does where they deploy those gambling problem pamphlets.
Yes.
I think they'll have to. But anyway, as we were saying, there's much more and much stranger news that we have to get to this evening. We're going to learn a little bit about a situation in New Orleans, a situation in Detroit, the home state of our own, codename Doc Holliday. We're also gonna, we'll get to some other things. Not all of it is terrible, but I think after a pause, we're going to look at the campus protest. And we have returned. One of the first stories we wanted to cover this evening, it's something that everybody in the United States has heard about. You have probably also heard about this regardless of where you live. In recent days, starting April 17th of this year, the U.S. saw one of the largest occurrences of campus protest since the era of Vietnam War protest. And there are protests on university campuses that later spread to other countries, all regarding the war, the Israel-Hamas war. And these are, to be clear, at least what you'll see in the news, is portrayals of someone being like rabidly anti-Semitic or just by being pro-Palestinian. Obviously, we know the truth is much more complicated, and arguing that innocent people should not be murdered does not automatically make you a bad person by any means. But this is still happening as we're recording on May 1st, Wednesday, and this is going to come to you on May 6th at the beginning of next week. Have you guys been keeping eyes on the protest, on the breaking news?
Absolutely. One of the biggest, I guess, most egregious examples happened right here in our backyard at Emory University, where police went from, zero to tase and like boots on backs of necks, like in the span of no time. And I've been very perplexed as to where this escalation is coming from, in what seemed to be very reasonable exercisings of, our rights as Americans to protest. It's suspicious to me. I don't get it where the escalation comes from. I think maybe I do get it, sort of, but it's still mind-boggling. But we'll get into it.
Yeah, my attention has been pretty sharply focused on Columbia University. I mean, certainly Emory, I think hit all of us a little differently because it's here. But the stuff in New York with Columbia University has been...
That's the latest, right?
Which just got breached because they had the temerity to possess bike locks. Kryptonite bike locks. That's the yellow cake in this situation, justifying the aggression.
Yeah, but it's an interesting echo of the past in the specific building that was used to barricade themselves into the protesters, and having NYPD deployed into the building via. I mean, you guys probably saw the pictures of that ramp thing they used to like get into the story
Hamilton
above.
Hall.
Yeah, really. Just I don't know. Anytime we see stuff like this, it feels movie-like in its. I don't know. In the same way, a movie, a big successful like summer blockbuster, right? One of the primary attributes of that type of film is the amount of money that's thrown at the screen, right? The amount of vehicles, human beings, special effects, and all that stuff. In watching these things on the news, it feels, again, I've said this personally about many things recently in the past 10 years. That it doesn't feel real because of the almost production of it.
Well, but doesn't it just feel completely out of balance with what's happening?
Yeah.
the level of deployment of these bells and whistles, these riot squads and these, tear gas and rubber bullets and stuff. I mean, it's just like, we've talked about it off the air a good bit lately, and it's a very difficult topic to discuss without people getting mad at you on one side or the other. But it has been very confusing for me, and we've talked about it a good bit, and I think I've, have a little bit more understanding of it after talking to you guys. But where this just unilateral, like anyone in opposition to Israel is instantly like an enemy of the state. I don't get it. It just seems so extreme and aggressive. And, there's even a lot of folks that are participating in these protests who are Jewish, who are saying, Jews for Palestine, and there are a lot of, agitator types on the maybe faculties even of these schools who are saying, I feel unsafe. I'm seeing folks that are, supporting Hamas, and it's tantamount to terrorist activity. But all of that feels to me to be a lot of much ado about nothing. These are peaceful protests, and I haven't seen any evidence of that kind of stuff. It all just seems like a lot of hot
sound
air
and fury, signifying very little. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the phrase agitation, because one of the continual accusations or conspiracy theories about this, which we'll get to in later episodes, is the idea of agent provocateurs or outside agitators. And that was indeed the calculus or the rationale stated by NYPD for their actions in Colombia. That's what other law enforcement agencies have been stating when they are cracking down on these protests, these have been continuing for some time. Let's just to give you a context, folks, here, because we know depending on what kind of news we're encountering, you're going to hear different narratives. So to give you a full list of the states that have campus protests going on right now about this and often other related issues, strap in. I'll read as quick as I can. New York, Arizona, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Florida, Georgia, Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts. It goes on. Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New Mexico, North Carolina, Ohio, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Texas, and Washington, D.C., Virginia, Vermont. Wisconsin, even. Wisconsin's in the mix now because of the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And in what we see with each of these protests or these occupying movements, is we see a troubling common narrative thread, which is law enforcement cracking down on college students who are peacefully protesting. And yes, to that earlier point, there are people who are doing counter-protest. That is absolutely true. There are people who are saying, I myself do not feel safe on campus as a result of these things. However, out of all the people protesting, there is also a common theme of the people who are getting cracked down on by state power. And we don't have to, you are always going to be your own person. You should never feel obligated or pushed into agreeing with something that you don't agree with. But we do have to realize, without getting too soapboxy, that a part of this country is inherently the First Amendment. The idea that you could speak your mind. And if you are not actively harming other people, if you're not calling for them to be harmed, then you should have that speech protected. That's one thing that differentiates this place in theory from authoritarian regimes, from absolute monarchies and dictatorships. And, as we know right now, a lot of us listening may indeed be on a campus. You know what I mean? You may be on a campus that got in a lockdown that is just as strict, if not more strict, than the COVID lockdowns of a few years back. And these students, these protesters, they're not third-party operators, right? Like sent in, because these days you don't have to do that. By and large, I'm just saying it's a stereotype. It's a convenient thing to hang on a hook.
Oh, I do agree. I was looking at something this morning from Eric Adams, the mayor of New York City, and he was going on and on and on about outside groups and
Agitators.
individuals that were coming onto the campuses, on various campuses, and training basically students to protest and organize in this way and to use tactics basically.
Right.
And as you said, Ben, that's not something you need some outside group to come in and teach you. You can go online. We've talked about it in the past, like just learning how to protest safely, right? And have things to protect yourself against things like tear gas and all that stuff.
I don't know if you guys have heard anything about this, but the Atlanta police apparently participates in sort of almost like a police exchange program.
Yes.
Where we send Atlanta police over to Israel and they are trained in kind of military crowd suppression tactics and then sent back over here, and then they're deployed into these protests to quash what I would argue is Palestinian voices. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, and this is all enmeshed in the whole Cop City debate as well,
Right.
here in Atlanta in particular. There's a really good piece on Democracy Now! Where Amy Goodman was talking to the chair of the Emory Philosophy Department, who was just kind of wandering around, checking out the protests. And the next thing she knew,
She did a
something.
wellness check on someone who was getting dropped.
Well, yeah, something turned and she saw someone getting dropped, like he said, and just said, "Why are you doing this? Stop it." And then the police asked her to leave. And she said, "No, I need to be here to witness this." And at which point they, handcuffed her behind her back. And in the same segment, they bring in a PhD medical student at Emory by the name of Umayya Mohammed, who speaks a lot about Emory's policies, about, kind of even going so far as to refer to doxing of students.
Sure.
And this kind of really iron-fisted repression of this kind of free speech with zero evidence of violence. And it just seems like cultural. And I feel like it's cultural in our country where there's this unilateral support where it's like Israel is 100% in the right, Palestine 100% in the wrong, and they're basically being treated as enemies of the state.
Well,
and I don't think that's right.
Well, it's a tempting narrative, and it's a simple one, right? Which people prefer simple explanations. Let's put it this way, because one of the big focuses we need to keep on here goes back to an episode we did years ago about the dangers of the militarization of police. The police are not the military. They're not supposed to be the military. Recently, and there are live updates that you can get in a couple of places if you have online access in the West. NBCnews.com has a live update thing that I've been reading for a while. You can also check out, let's go to a quote from Chris Isidore writing for CNN. This came out just today as we record. Here's what happened in Colombia. New York City police used flashbang grenades to breach the building that had been occupied by these protesters for some time. The flash grenades, if you're not familiar with a flashbang, they are used as a shock and disorient kind of tactic, right? They have a very bright flash, a very loud bang, but they're not themselves explosive fissile material. You know what I mean?
Leave
They're not
your
gonna
head
blow up the
ringing,
room. Yeah.
and your vision kind of just, if you can imagine just having like a really bright light shine in your eyes and what the after effects are of that, maybe X that by 4 or 5.
So just last night, as we record, from what we understand, officers arrested more than 200 protesters, the majority of which are obviously peaceful protesters, overnight. And then they went to City College of New York. That's about a mile north of Manhattan as the crow flies. And they made dozens of extra arrests. This coincides with arrest and police attacks at like the University of Arizona, at Tulane, where there have been a lot of, and we'll get to Louisiana later in an unrelated story. There have been a lot of allegations there, in particular, of these quote unquote outside agitators. I'm torn on this, guys, because the First Amendment is incredibly important to me and to this country. Public universities are part of the U.S. government, so they have to follow any court decree over how the First Amendment exists, how it should be applied. private universities and any private business really has a lot more agency in what their standards around speech and protest may be. If you want to learn more about that, go to a great New York Times article called What the First Amendment Means for Campus Protest by Alan Blinder, also published today as we're going into record. And with this, these accusations of anti-Semitism are often going to be made because there is some sort of anti-Semitic action, but that same accusation logically can be weaponized, right, against people who simply don't agree with something that you agree with. And there's no way around that. To be clear, we have never on this show, we've never defended anything like anti-Semitism, nor have we defended Islamophobia. They're both just very nasty things that perhaps most irritatingly demonstrate a lack of critical thought or the ability to think through things critically. But we are and remain anti-genocide. We are and remain anti-police state. Would we agree with that statement in general? I think maybe it's a little too general.
No, I think it's just right. I mean, what I cannot agree with is the weaponization of rhetoric and the othering of people just trying to wrap their heads around an issue and be, fair and be, I don't know, just sort of, like to your point, Ben, like there's a lot of bullying going on, in this debate where if you're this, then you're this. If you say anything negative about Israel, then you're an anti-Semite. If you say anything positive about Israel, then you're supporting genocide. It's just a very damned if you do, damned if you don't. And I think I would agree completely that what is happening in Gaza at the hands of the Israelis is something that would certainly resemble genocide. I don't know.
Yes, and genocide bad. Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. But it's strange, I think. I don't know, guys. Strange for me because I know the episodes we've done in the past on the way student protest movements can arise, especially in other countries, when there are intelligence agencies involved from other countries.
Sure.
That is a thing. And we've talked about it before on the show. So it's weird for me to square all of this that's going on when there's so much emotional response happening to try and come at it and think, well, what are the actual possibilities here and mechanisms to have this large of a protest movement occurring across the United States about something very specific that is not happening inside the United States and right before a presidential election? That weirds me out a little bit. It makes my senses go off. It doesn't mean that I or anybody should think that that's what's happening here, but it is weird.
It also, we do know for reality check, regardless of how the powers that be politically on both sides of the aisle, regardless how they try to spin it, it is known and it is true that adversarial governments have been quite successful in their asymmetric warfare tactics, right? InfoWar is real. Do check out our earlier episodes on this. As you guys know, I researched this stuff kind of extensively.
No, it's something
I'm saying it's a real concern. It's not crazy to ask yourself that question.
I remember looking at this at great detail too when we were making those episodes a long time ago. And it really is a creepy thing. If you look at the span of history and how often young people, especially in colleges in any country, can be targeted basically with these things.
The U.S. did it in South America.
It's because the youth can be a scary thing to the establishment, because they represent new ideas. They represent a breaking of the status quo. And when enough of them organize and insist on having their voices heard in this framework of quote unquote free speech that we have, it freaks people out. And we're seeing it. It's so gross and transparent what's being done, what they're doing. And I just wanted to point to one other article on Vox, how today's anti-war protests stack up against major student movements in history. They're saying, and I think we all agree, that these campus protests are shaping up to be some of the biggest of the 21st century, and they're just going to keep going. And we're going to get to a point, I think, where if we keep seeing this kind of violence perpetrated on peaceful protesters, there could well be a sea change. It's just, how polarizing can you get? You know, what if it were your kids just out there expressing their voices and not standing for violence against innocent people, murder of innocent people?
Or protesting the Vietnam War. The photographs, right? The video footage here is distressingly similar. I'm not asking for people to solve problems, but I think we all agree it is important to realize how fragile things like the First Amendment and indeed the great experiment that is the United States can be. And police states are bad. It's not a hot take. It's just a reality. The only people who like police states are the dictators who run police states. Everybody else is just trying not to die. And that's not the kind of world, or not the kind of country that people should want to grow up in. We don't have the answers. We pride ourselves on being honest when that's the case, but we do want to hear from you. You are the most important part of the show. We are glad that you are here. And thank you, as always, for taking the time to reach out and speak with us. Let us know what you think is going on with these protests. And if it's not too much, let us know what you think the end results will be. We're going to pause for a word from our sponsors, and we'll return with more strange news.
And we've returned, and for this story, we're headed to the 313, aka Rock City, aka Motown, aka Detroit, Michigan.
Detroit what? Is that a thing? Detroit what? Did I hear that in like a stand-up, like a comedy thing? I don't know what that's from.
What's your dope like? Yeah.
That must be it.
Did you say the City of Champions, Ben? I just learned about that back in the day, back in the 30s, when Detroit had all the best teams.
They're still pretty good, right? Aren't the Lions quite good?
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well,
they're very blue. I just mean color scheme wise.
Believe in things and support people.
Hold on. Wait, because we made it to the playoffs.
Thank you. I thought you did okay.
We were bad for a long time. I will not tolerate any lion slander.
It's not lion slander. I said it's good to believe in people and support things.
It's sort of an angels in the outfield kind of situation.
No, it's funny though that we're mentioning that, because I think I texted you, Alexis, at some point. Maybe it was during the playoff things. I was texting some Detroit friends, and every single person from Detroit, including our friend Lucky Yates, doubled down. The residents of Detroit have a great and well-earned pride in their city, and I always think we should explore it more. Just like the car stuff days, I just want to go see the Packard stuff, from the Packard car company.
Look, so if you're like me and you don't know much about Detroit, you may remember the enthralling film 8 Mile, starring Marshall Mathers as an aspiring young battle rap artist. And if you'd like to imagine where this story is going to take place, just put your mind on that titular road from that cinematic masterpiece and then travel approximately 7 miles northeast to 15 Mile Road. And the address is 19100 15 Mile Road in Clinton Township. Clinton Township, well, maybe you know more about this, Alexis, than we do. It appears to be in the greater metropolitan area of Detroit, like the city, but it is a township. So I don't know if it would be considered like a whole separate thing.
Clinton Township is definitely like considered a separate city. It's not considered Detroit. It's very far from Detroit. As you said, it's like 7 miles northeast. It's like you go like up 94 to 94 starts going north instead of like east and west. And then you get up to 14 Mile. And that's where Clinton Township starts. So definitely not Detroit, and even further away from some of the other suburbs that are closer to Detroit that like border 8 Mile.
Would you call it an exurb then in that regard?
I don't really call it much of anything because I don't really think about Clinton Township, but I can tell you that it's no shade, but it's far away. It's considered far away.
Okay, can't wait for that Clinton Township email. Anyway,
all right. So Lexus, maybe you've never been to 19100 15 Mile Road in Clinton Township, where if you do travel there now, you will find a charred, barren slab where once a building stood. And guys, I linked to a picture there so you can look at this building. It's a single sizable building that has an entrance right in the center, and then it has 2 businesses inside that one building. On the left, you'll find Dollar Palace, and on the right, you will find a place that just says goo, GOO.
Mm-hmm.
And you may be curious as to what that means or stands for. Well,
what does that mean or stand for?
Well, it's called the Goo Smoke Shop / it has two businesses, Select Distributors Wholesale. And if you did go there when the building's
like a vape situation?
Yes.
Okay.
It is ye old smoke shop. And if you had traveled there at the time and then you saw this smoldering pile that is that area now, you may be asking yourself again,
this barren slab, if you will.
Yes.
I gotta give you props on that turn of phrase, by the way. Please carry on.
I'm sure somebody else used it better than me. I've just put words together. There, if you might be wondering what the heck happened here, well, it all goes back to what was available for purchase at this good old goo smoke shop. And more importantly, what?
The goo. I just want to give me that goo.
I think that's why it worked for him for so long. But more importantly, what was distributed by those Select Distributors Wholesale. So if we imagine the inside of a smoke shop, guys, I think we've done this exercise before, but what are you going to find in there?
Hookah stuff.
Mm-hmm. You'll find tinctures. You'll find a lot of vapes. You will probably find vape refill devices or paraphernalia.
Juice.
Juice. You might find, depending on the states, you might find some CBD stuff, some THC stuff. Maybe
Kratom. Kratom is very popular in these types of places.
So like supplements. Supplements, snacks, sometimes some prophylactics, some glassware, some metal and wooden products, and lots of things that are probably flammable.
I was about to say, like those coals that you get for hookah setups, those things are hella flammable.
Half empty cans of paint with oily rags hanging out just so.
Wait a minute. Let's not talk about pressurized butane canisters.
See, now this is where we get to the wholesale distributors here. They sold large containers of butane, which is a very flammable substance used to fill all kinds of things that set fires, right? So lighters of all
torches,
shapes and sizes.
Exactly,
and also, interestingly enough, guys, a crap ton of nitrous oxide, which is an odorless, colorless, non-flammable gas. But it treats fire a lot like oxygen does. It can be used as to fuel a fire the way oxygen does, but not in the same way as a butane would, right? It would all of a sudden ignite.
It functions as a propellant, though, you're saying.
It does, precisely. And that is I think that is maybe the crux of this story. Those two substances, butane and nitrous oxide. Let's go to a story that is, honestly, guys, is a bit stale at this point, but it got renewed by another story we're going to bring in at the end here. But this is a story from March 6th out of the Washington Post. Explosion at vape supplier kills teen and flings gas canisters up to a mile.
Jeez.
This is insane, guys. Back on March 5th, I guess between March 5th and 6th, there was some kind of fire that began, which is still under investigation as we record today on Wednesday, May 1st. There was a fire at this location. Whether it was inside the building, right behind the building, there's some information on that coming out, but it took place at this location. And it ignited all of these giant butane canisters and the nitrous oxide canisters, and it even superheated all of those like vape batteries, all of those very powerful batteries that were located inside.
Which they won't even let you bring in a checked bag, on an airplane, right?
Because of the pressure changes and the possibility of fires. Well, there was such a massive explosion. You can see videos of this thing if you look online. It was almost, you guys have seen videos of like a fireworks factory catching on fire and just the kind of the chain, continuous explosions that are occurring, and some of them very small, some of them larger. You guys have seen something like that?
Absolutely.
Sure.
It was like that, but with metal canisters being shot into the air and exploding. So there's shrapnel being fired for a mile around, in a mile radius, sometimes up to 2 miles. There would be canisters found on roofs or embedded in the ground. And there was one unfortunate person who was 19 years old, who was standing literally a quarter of a mile away from this explosion at a gas station, and a piece of shrapnel caused his life to end. Insane.
Terrible.
Horrible situation for that one person. And also, imagine just walking outside of where you live and seeing this in the distance and hearing this with these constant, consistent explosions. It was so loud that the fire chief there in Clinton Township, this guy named Tim Duncan, said he could hear the explosion from his house, which is 7 miles away roughly, before he ever got deployed, to go check out what the heck was going on.
Do we know the cause?
The cause was improperly stored giant containers of butane and nitrous oxide.
So definitely accidental.
Well, I didn't say that.
Okay, improper storage, but I guess technically then by that definition, you could purposely improperly store stuff. But
yes.
Where are we going with this?
Well, okay, I'm going to jump to something from the Macomb Daily, MACOMB Daily. This is what they say. Authorities said the building was not supposed to contain these butane and nitrous oxide tanks that were found on the property. And during the last inspection in 2022, none of those canisters were there. If they were there, they would have gotten a hit for that, right? With serious fines because of the way this business is zoned. Mm-hmm. It's not zoned for industrial use, and storing those kinds of materials would fall into industrial use. It does appear, or at least according to these officials, the building didn't have the proper safety structures in place to house those types of tanks of materials.
So like fire suppression would be an example?
Oh, yeah. I think it also has to do with temperature and other potential, possibilities there are for damage to be done to those, to just one of those containers, which could set off a chain reaction like it did.
Copy. Yeah.
And one of the big scary things at the time when this was first happening was that there were unexploded canisters of both butane and nitrous oxide that were lying on the ground, as we said, or just, landed on a roof, and residents were trying to recover them or dispose of them. But some of them were ruptured, the metal container was ruptured, so they could explode, or a few of them did explode. So it was like grenades that were just left all around.
Dude, I mean, and this is obviously hugely dangerous for surrounding properties and anybody that might happen to be walking by. I mean, these things could be weaponized and launched, out of windows, and would shatter and really seriously injure or kill anyone that happened to be around when this went down, right?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Super dangerous, super scary.
Matt, isn't there there's a twist here coming, right?
There's a twist. Let's get to the twist. So, Ben, you asked, what caused it? How did it happen? And ultimately, who's responsible for this thing? Because it did damage other businesses and homes and property, and it killed a human being.
Jesus, okay.
Well, the owner initially, on the day that it happened, I guess the night that it happened, the owner of these two businesses was in contact with both the police there in Clinton Township and the fire department and some of the city officials. So this person immediately was reached out to, and they were speaking, and they were on good terms. But then on Saturday, April 20th, so this is early March when this occurred, right? On Saturday, April 20th, the owner of these companies attempted to flee, not just, the Detroit area, but the United States for Hong Kong, which is pretty, I don't know, doesn't look good, maybe? Attempt to flee. The Clinton town.
Well, was it a round trip ticket?
No, it was not. It was a one-way ticket to Hong Kong.
That's how they get you.
Is this a national? What's this person's citizenship status or, visa status? I'm just curious if
they're U.S., right?
Yes, citizen of the United States. The man's name is Noor, Noor, Noel, Noel, Kestuo, Kestuo. This is a 31-year-old person. He lives in Commerce Township, which is also there in the Detroit area. And he tried to use his passport to go from JFK in New York City to Hong Kong. And basically, the Clinton Township PD let the authorities there at JFK International know, and they picked him up.
Oh, good.
Is Kesto Greek?
It does sound like a
maybe
Greek etymology. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, but yes, so that makes sense. He got stopped with a one-way ticket, which does provide reasonable suspicion that someone be attempting to flee the country.
Exactly.
And I'm sorry, this is how long after the actual,
You said April 20th
explosion?
after explosion on March 4th, right? So we put some time in there.
Yeah, March 5th,
4th,
6th,
okay.
up to April 20th. And then it took like 4 or 5 days for the detectives in the township there near Detroit to go and get him from New York and bring him back, where he was then arraigned on Thursday, April 25th, in court and charged with 1 count of involuntary manslaughter.
Ooh,
which is
he's going to plead cannabis-induced psychosis?
I hope not. I don't think so. I don't know how that would work there, but it is a felony charge and it has a maximum sentence of 15 years.
So this is at this point, we're thinking more of a negligence case.
Well,
someone that wasn't storing their inventory correctly, or is there any suspicion of a foul play in terms of trying to, burn down for the insurance money or whatever?
It was illegal possession and improper storage of nitrous oxide and butane cans.
Nitrous oxide is not something you sell at smoke shops. That's illegal.
No,
right?
It is.
People huff that like a... in the fish parking lot out of balloons.
This is the second twist, you guys. Maybe we need to do a whole episode on this. There is an entire section of this story that we're not even going to fully get to today. That is the number of nitrous oxide, large. We're talking like foot tall
tanks.
Nitrous oxide tanks that look like butane refillers, just like if you sized them up by 4.
Sure.
And they are designed to, and it says on the goo distributors, like websites, that they sell all these things. They were for sale on Walmart.com. They were for sale on Amazon. They're huge. You are supposed to, at least according to the creators of these products, connect it up to one of your whipped cream maker machines.
Whippets.
Yeah.
People call them whippets.
And make whipped cream. That's what they sell them for. That's
Just
what
like
they're designed for.
During the Depression, when you could buy frozen grape juice concentrate with explicit directions on what not to do to make it wine.
Yeah. Well, guys, there's such a demand for this nitrous oxide in not only the Detroit area, don't want to malign Detroit, in all of the United States, you guys, that at smoke shops now, the most profitable item that exists in smoke shops is nitrous oxide canisters.
It is legal to sell if as long as it's like, I mean, you can't tell what someone's going to do with it, but there's all kinds of loopholes we know with those lab chemicals or things like, what was it called? Spice, remember that? Where it was marketed as like, this is not for human consumption. Or only use this as an incense or something,
Yeah, or then, I mean, it's a problem people grapple with because you can't stop selling people, cigarette lighters on the off chance that one person might use a lighter to start a forest fire.
Well, and to be fair, if anyone's watched The Bear or any like fancy cooking competition, they use these nitrous canisters all the time to make foams of any variety, not just whipped cream. So there should be, and people who are using it for the right reasons have every right to get this stuff. But massive tanks of it in a smoke shop, ain't no gourmets shopping there for this product.
Some people need a lot of whipped cream.
It's just weird. It's
very weird.
It for me, it's just strange, right? And it was very strange for the Township Fire Chief Tim Duncan. That you can hear remarks from him. Well, not these particular remarks, but remarks from him during a press conference that was given on March 5th. You can find that on YouTube via the Clinton Township Community TV YouTube channel. But here's a quote Tim Duncan gave when speaking with Detroit Free Press. Quote, "What people are finding out is the community at large has a large desire for nitrous oxide, and they can make a lot of money off selling these things. We're trying to get out there and make sure people are using this in the appropriate fashion," which I don't know how you do that, honestly, Mr. Duncan. But the nitrous is supposed to be used for the food service end of the industry, and obviously we're seeing that's simply not what's happening. And this is a problem not simply in Clinton Township, but it's throughout the state. With the quantities that we had in this building, he's talking about the owner here. He's sending them somewhere. Now it's time to uncover where are they going. Thought that was just an interesting thing. It's following the rabbit hole, basically, because the ATF is heavily involved in this case now because of that nitrous oxide.
As they should be.
Yeah, and you're right, Matt. There's a lot of things wrapped up in this one story, a lot of questions, but it reminds me of, I don't know if another item that used to be, maybe not anymore, but sold at like smoke shops or maybe like kind of sex type shops, was video cassette head cleaner, which if used in a certain way is poppers, which is a drug that is used often for sexual purposes, that can cause like euphoria and other kinds of effects that are good for sexy times, but they're marketed and it can be used to clean the heads of your VCR.
I had zero idea about that.
Mm-hmm.
What is the chemical?
Well, there's
amyl nitrate.
It's amyl nitrate. That's what poppers are. But I think whatever video head cleaner is, it's got similar properties, but I don't think it's exactly that.
Amyl nitrate and other nitrates can be sold that way.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. So while I'm not sure, there's different ones, but like audio video head cleaner is tantamount to the same effects as amyl nitrate. Weird.
Very weird. All right. Well, hey guys, any other last thoughts on this one?
They used to call them Amy's in the 60s. No, Matt, this is a wild ride. And I really do think there's a lot to unpack here that would probably be worthy of a deeper exploration.
Okay. Alexis, anything else you need to say about Detroit before we get out?
Go Lions.
All right.
Go Lions.
All right. We'll be right back with more strange news.
And we're back with our last story of the day. Kind of have a bit of a misery sandwich on our hands today. Not that Matt's story wasn't heavy in its own right, but I think it was, what do we call it on the text chain, a lighter shade of nightmare fuel. A lot of actual fuel in that story too. But we've obviously discussed at length many of the accusations, both confirmed and alleged, against the Catholic Church and high-ranking officials when it comes to sexual abuse of children, that have been covered up, brushed under the rug, allowed to continue indefinitely. Well, let's just up the ante just a little bit. As if that weren't enough, why don't we add child sex trafficking proper to the list of accusations and that are very, very, very much on the edge of being fully proven. In New Orleans, the New Orleans Archdiocese is the target of a child sex trafficking inquiry. Louisiana State Police served search warrants on the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of New Orleans in what's to be the beginnings of a massive, unprecedented, sweeping probe of this organization. These warrants were recently served, alleging that for decades, the institution has been involved not only in the church's global clergy child molestation scandal, but also in something even more, as you would say, Ben, unclean, the trafficking and shipment and use and abuse of minors for the sexual gratification of predators, often high-ranking officials within the church. I'm reading from an article in The Guardian by Ramon Antonio Vargas in New Orleans and David Hammer of WWL in Louisiana, which is a TV news channel. This is the primary source that I have for this, so I'm just going to read pretty liberally from this to start. But the article starts, the clerk at the state criminal courthouse where the warrant was signed released the 11-page document on Tuesday. It makes clear that troopers involved in a pending rape prosecution case against one priest came to suspect that particular case was part of a broader pattern of widespread sexual abuse of minors dating back decades that was covered up and not reported to law enforcement. Goes on to note that previous archbishops, the highest ranking official in the archdiocese, not only knew of the sexual abuse and failed to report all the claims to law enforcement, but spent archdiocese funding to actually support the accused. And within the language of the warrants, Any and all documents were required to be produced that pertain in any way to the sexual abuse of a minor by clergy members employed or otherwise associated with the Archdiocese of New Orleans. And the implication there is that these records are believed to constitute a violation of the state's laws against trafficking of children for sexual purposes. It also demands any and all communications between the Archbishop of New Orleans and any department within the Vatican. So they're trying to kind of breach that air gap, into the wider organization. Any department within the Vatican pertaining to child sexual abuse, among various other files.
And
Wow.
so this is on the heels of some earlier reports that were apparently buried or suppressed or ignored?
That's right. Attorneys for victims of sexual abuse perpetrated by clergy were given access to the documents that formed kind of the basis of what's called the Key Memo. And that's because in these cases, their clients became part of a bankruptcy proceeding against the church. So I think those lawyers that were handling the memo to law enforcement in 2022, that's when federal investigators, with the aid of state troopers, started to look further into what this memo kind of pointed to. So at this point, it says they began investigating New Orleans clergy for possibly violating federal law by taking children across state lines for the purposes of sexual abuse.
Dude. Sorry,
And
it just makes you furious. I'm sure.
I know. They talk about some specifics. Additionally, it was reported that in some instances, gifts were given to abuse victims by the accused molesters with instructions to pass on, this is chilling, to pass on or give the gift to certain priests at the next school or church. It was said that the gift was a form of signaling to another priest that the person was to be a target of sexual abuse.
Vulnerable. And apparently
it's a system, guys.
Of course, there often is. And there was an Associated Press investigation dating back to like 2019. Like the law knew about this, it appears.
Yeah. It would appear so. It just feels like an escalation to me. And if it's happening here, it's the kind of thing that doesn't feel isolated. It feels
Absolutely
like with these types of systematic elements to identify, like this was designed to be a network,
Dude.
with enough passing of the buck or just moving someone, a town or a country over. I would also imagine, I'm sure a lot of us unfortunately have to think about this and have experienced some of this firsthand. Folks, if you have only lived in the United States, please be aware there are many other countries with a far looser grasp on the idea of rule of law. And indeed, in some of those parts of the world, regions, countries, whatever you want to call it, the institution of the Catholic Church functions in the role of the state and has a lot of power. Yes.
Well, and also a looser grasp of consent or a lot less emphasis placed on what that might look like.
Consent does not enter the equation. No,
that's right.
These are monsters and these are victims. This is, unfortunately, this is one of those things like we were talking about earlier in this evening's program. People want an uncomplicated narrative. Well, organized child abuse rings, we posit, are an uncomplicated narrative. These people need to be brought down.
Yeah, absolutely. Really quickly, I just want to mention something else that's in that memo, which is not as bad as the trafficking we're discussing here, but it is this type of insidious behavior that existed, at least in this case, with the Archbishop of New Orleans, this guy named Gregory Amond, according to that memo, had previously made settlements with people, so victims who claimed that a particular priest had molested them, and he authorized with official church budgets 2 settlements, one for $125,000, another for $100,000, to resolve these situations out of court. So they become secrets. The church essentially bought people's silence, right?
That. I mean,
I will
Jesus,
say that
guys.
is illegal. You can sign an NDA that can be enforced, like this out of court settlement, that agreement. That doesn't really hold water if your NDA is agreeing to not disclose a crime, a criminal act. But it's intimidation tactics as well. This very powerful institution. Of course, not all Catholics are evil. Just forget that part. But this is.
I think we've all expressed tenuous relationships with the idea of settling out of court in general, especially when it comes to bringing powerful individuals and organizations to task. It just feels like a get out of jail free card and like a sweep everything under the rug card.
Kendrick Lamar just taught me that apparently Drake had a $500-something thousand out of court settlement related to the long running rumors that he has attempted to groom young and underage women.
Not to be that guy, but he strikes me as that not being that far from the truth. I don't know.
Never met him.
What it is about him. There's something that's icky about that guy. I don't know what it is.
But I'm glad we're mentioning
Drake, not Kendrick. Kendrick rules.
Right. Well, I'm glad we're mentioning the out-of-court settlements.
But guys, just the whole point of this for me is, speaking of systems, right, that are in place, this practice of taking in insane amounts of money from all of the people that attend all of the churches, right, in one place, like let's say New Orleans or that area, whatever the archbishop presides over, taking in that money from all of your parishioners,
using it
to silence those who either speak up or, get abused. Or get abused and speak up, right?
And that we talked about how sometimes some of this stuff, it just feels like the movies, but people that get just hung like power mad and who are like, I can do whatever I want because I am the voice of God. I am connected. Therefore, I cannot be judged by the laws of man. And I think there's probably a genuine delusional belief amongst some of these circles that is the case.
Tempting me, but I prayed about it. I read some. Well, the only word for it is I read some infernal things regarding activities at the Vatican, and the network spans, right? And there are documented cases wherein people were saying that these victims, these children, were tempting them, or it was Satan tempting them. You know what I mean? And maybe they really did believe that rationalization, but it doesn't make their actions not monstrous. I am not in favor of rehabilitative acts. This is a take them down situation kind of thing for me, just because, again, we see an established network. We see one that has been able to practice to a degree what we will call regulatory capture, which is control over state and law enforcement institutions. And if this is horrific, our thoughts are with all the victims, all their loved ones, family members, but please understand, this is happening in the United States, and it shows us the statistical inevitability that even worse things are happening in places that have more compromised governments. This is just horrific. People are learning to speak with whales, though. If we need good news,
Ben, can we please? That's all I've got to say. I wash my hands. No, I don't wash my hands of it. This is something that needs to, these people need to be dragged out into the light, and no one should ever wash their hands of making sure these people see justice. But I wash my hands of this story for the moment, just to wash the ick off. I need a shower. Could we maybe swim with the whales for a minute, Ben?
Yes, sir. Just for a second, we can tell you in good news for fans of animals, in a world first this April, scientists had a conversation with a humpback whale. What did they talk about? Here's the thing.
Quesadillas.
They're not totally sure. I wish. That'd be an amazing. Can you imagine if extraterrestrials land and they're really, really hot about something that's familiar on their planet and they just only want to talk about that? I love that idea. What if they, because I guess the way time and space work, they're a little behind, right, in musical trends. The way Europe is continually catching up to U.S. musical trends. I said it.
Whoa, that is in fact a hot take. One might argue the opposite. But I'm with you, Ben.
It depends on which genres we're talking about and
That's
stuff.
True.
But
what if their equivalent of Avatar 3 is about to release. So they just came here to like get some hype going
Do
on
some
a different
viral
planet.
marketing.
Yeah.
They'll say you don't really have to watch the first two. Yeah, apologies to Europe. Of course, Europe leads the way in so many of these things. I'm glad you didn't let me slide on that one, Noel. But here's what happened. An animal behaviorist named Josie Hubbard, her and her group have been working with a humpback whale named Twain. And off the coast of Alaska, these 6 scientists were basically doing something that I'm sure a lot of us have done with animals in our neck of the woods. They were taking recordings of an actual animal communicating, and they were playing it back. In this case, they were playing it back into the void of the waters off the coast of Alaska, playing humpback sounds and hoping a humpback whale answered them. And humans actually don't know very much about the whales at this time. So this is the first time they managed to get in a conversation with it. And it's kind of like if you were talking to someone online and you were using a set of emojis that you don't understand, but they were responding, and you just sort of kept trying to respond with their replies. It's like a large language model thing almost. So the next step is to figure out what the conversation was about. But apparently it went well.
Yeah, I heard just a snippet of it just now, Ben, as you're describing it. Just these interesting sounds that were emitted by the scientists, and then the response that's very different but similar.
Yeah, it's like following up, right?
Yeah.
They hit you back with some more emoji. We know that the cetaceans are incredibly intelligent. We know that, as hippie as it may sound, we know that personhood should not be a concept restricted entirely to this one brand of primate. But it would be amazing to be able to decode this. They're using AI now. It's one of the few good uses of AI to try to decipher this situation to see if they can get to a Rosetta Stone. But whales are so, like, they have accents, they have gangs, they have little clicks.
They do cool little hand signals.
They got hand signals, which is wild. Because who knows where they get the hands? They're getting them from somewhere.
Oh, I know. I always love that Kurt Vonnegut line about how like dolphins have fins because they evolved so they couldn't hold machine guns, and made them inherently more peaceful. That's like the peaceful whales. No machine guns in those fins.
Well, with this, folks, we really appreciate your time. As always, we're all in this together. We want to hear from you regarding any of these stories we have explored. We want to hear what you think whales would say. Honestly, also, I think it would be hilarious if extraterrestrials landed and they weren't that impressive. Like they had only worked out space travel and everything else that we had done amazed them. They would be like Velcro.
Whoa.
Sparkling water.
What is all this glittery stuff in the ocean?
Oh boy. They're probably just going to talk to the whales. But in the meantime, you can talk to us. We'd love to hear from you. We try to be easy to find online.
Conspiracy Stuff Show is the handle where you can find us on Facebook, on YouTube, where we have video content rolling out every single week, and on XFKA Twitter, on Instagram and TikTok. Boy, can you ever find us at the handle Conspiracy Stuff Show.
Hey, and we have a phone number. You can call it 1-833-STDWYTK. Please put it in your phone as a contact just in case it calls you back after you call in and leave a 3-minute voicemail, if 3 minutes is the maximum. When you call in, do give yourself a cool nickname and let us know in the recording if we can use your name and message on the air. If you got more to say than can fit in that 3 minutes, why not instead send us a good old-fashioned email? We are
conspiracy@iHeartRadio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.